because if one of them walks at 2.5 meters a second and one walks at 1 meter a second, the other one's going to catch up really fast. So it should have been closer and less of a head start, so it would have been easier to make it look like a real situation.
So you felt like this didn't seem real?
Not really, because, well, I guess it did, but why would you give them a 45 head start in like a 70-meter race?
So you're just bothered by
It's
how
like
big the head
so-
start was?
Yeah, it's like so easy to tell that he's trying to make him win.
45 meters is a long, if you think about
It's
it.
more than
probably
half
down
of
the
the
hall.
race.
That's like a whole hallway
Whole
down.
hallway?
And also that would be 45 seconds.
So
And
like
it's
he'd
already-
be, that's 45 seconds that he could have walked, Henry.
So like he'd be all the way down at the cafeteria and we'd still be up here at your classroom.
So how would you change it?
Maybe like
I think the walking
15
rate
or
should be like
something.
2 and 2.5.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about it with your groups and see if you guys can come up with a way to change it and make it more realistic?
Yeah, sure.
Why doesn't each group talk about it? See if you can think of a different way to make it more realistic, and we'll try your way. What are you guys thinking? Running race, okay.
I don't know. 9.
Okay, and any head start at all?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit?
Like 2 meters. No, maybe like 10, 5 or 10.
Okay. So if you used your idea, could you figure out how long the race should be?
Yeah.
So with 10 and 9, and then what kind of a head start?
10.
10?
5 or 10.
See what kind of a race you guys would have
Let's
with
say
that.
6.
So if we have the 2 and the 2.5 walking rates, he's only walks a half a meter faster. So if it's a 70 meter, okay, so if it's a 70 meter race and he runs it in divided by 2, that's
So
a
you do 70 divided by 2?
that'd be 30. That would take him 35 seconds.
but how long
It takes his brother 28.
Yeah. Wait.
So
it was the
Wait,
same
70.
thing we did with 45 meters. 3 seconds away.
You will have 0 and 30.
that's
So,
7
Try it here and
away.
That's 7. So we should go like 50, and minus will give him like a 5 meter head start.
45.
And 45 divided by 2 equals 22.5. Equals 18.
If you
4
did-
second race, so we're getting closer.
What are you guys doing? I don't get this.
I haven't heard, so what are you guys doing?
Okay, we were changing Henry's walking rate to 2 meters per second.
Okay.
Yeah, and so now we're doing like a guess and check again where we do the different.
Because I got to like 4.4 and a half second race. I took the 50 and we gave him a 5 meter head start, and then we did the. Oops, I did something wrong.
So you're changing the little guy's walking rate, but keeping the big guy's rate the same.
Yeah, I just made it a 2.2 race, 2.5 race. So 2
Wait, a
seconds.
2.5 meter race?
No, 2. It's a. If the race I just did would be a 45 for the little guy at a walking rate of 2 and 50 for the big guy at 2.5, and now the Henry runs it in 22.5 seconds, while Emil runs it in 20.
So you're keeping the same head start.
No, I changed it to a 5 meter head
Oh, you
start.
changed it to a 5. That's what I meant.
Because and now it makes it less obvious, and they're closer together, so it's easier to make it less obvious.
Well, so how long is the meter race going to be?
This one's a 50. But
Wait, to get it, so you did Wait, how long is the meter race?
Henry was a 45 because I subtracted the 5-meter head start, and then it would be a 50-meter race for Emil.
Oh, okay, now I got you.
In a 5 meters, that's not that long. Though. I mean, that's a little head start.
That's like probably from here down to that cap.
So they're guessing and checking some different head starts, and you're saying you'd rather have it be a landmark number.
I'm not sure that I just like, I don't know.
Okay, it works. It's like less than a second.
Yeah, I'm confused too.
It's less than a second.
If you have what for a head start?
If we, for a head start, it was 30, and it was like, it'd be like 73.5. He'd like so win by like one meter.
So can you
Like,
take
not
them
even a
through
second.
how you came up with that?
Like it wouldn't even win by a second. It'd be so
Jocelyn, where'd
close.
you guys get 27?
27. Where did we get 27? We don't have 27 in
They're now saying 30.
30 is our head
How
start.
did you get 27 when you got it?
We're just guessing checking.
Just guess.
Can you take them through how you used your equations? Because you're now saying
Yeah.
30.
Yeah.
Okay, so take them through your equations with 30.
Yesterday our equation was D for Emil was D equals
2.5 times S.
times S, and then for Andre it was D
D
equals
equals 1 times S.
But now it'll be 1.5 times S plus the head start.
Would be 30.
That's where our 30 comes in. And then we did all that, and
And we got 73.5 for Andre and 72.5 for Emil. So it'd be like so close. It wouldn't even be a
And
second.
how long is the race?
73.5. It's like 0.5 smaller than our other race. But it works. It's like really, really, really close. It's like neck and neck. But Andre still wins.
So I think she's confused on now what do you do with those equations to get what you did?
Yeah.
you substitute the S for a guess.
Yeah, like, okay, I put like 29 times 1.5 plus 30, and I got 73.5. And I went 29 times 2.5, and I got 72.
Do you have your calculator? Take her through it on her calculator.
But then our race is 74.5?
No, it's 73.5.
Yeah,
That's
right?
where Andre is finishing.
Yeah, it's only one difference. It's like 1 meter
Oh, I
difference. It's not
get
even
it.
a second.
Alright, we got a 6-meter head start. So, he's got, at 0 seconds, he's got 6 meters. And then at 1 second, he's got 5 and he's got 10. At 2 seconds,
He has 10. He has
14 meters.
So we still had 3, 15, 18, and then at 4, 20, 22.
But
And then at 5, he passes.
well, it's really close. We just want to make it close. He's still in the lead.
Yeah. But he's close.
Yeah, he's really close, so that'd be a really close
So
race.
who ends up winning the race?
The little Henry kid. And he only has to have a 6-meter head start. But, then, if we made another one, then the one dude would pass him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then Henry would be second if we kept going. Yeah. Because he's got faster. Because it's 5 and 4. Do you get it?
Yes, I get it.
Alright.
Like, what is your total seconds that you won by?
1.5. Hers was 1.5.
And yours was? And mine was 2. So we came up with a 1, 1.5, 2 meter. I mean, 1 second difference. So we can compare these by how much we used as a head start. Like, so how much did you use?
I
for
used
head
7.
And you came up with 1. I used
I got
She
7
can't
and got
use-
up with 1.5.
And I did 6 and I got 1.
and I got 5 and I got 2. So there must be something.
I think the lower.
So 5, 6, 7.
And we
But
came
you
up,
got the least, and you had the middle
we
number.
came up with something weird, but usually it doesn't work out. Like
What I
they
did
came
is-
up with something.
Okay, 'cause
She used the 7-meter head start and she got 1.5 second race close.
Difference between,
Yeah.
okay.
She used 6 and got 1.
And I used 5 and got 2.
So, but it wouldn't, cause see, I thought it would do the lower the like number that you have for the head start, the higher the number you have in the timing of difference. But it doesn't make sense then because hers is the middle and hers the lowest.
What if you tried 3 other numbers and see what happens?
Okay.
Okay,
Like, test your
let's
idea.
do 8, 9, 10. Okay. I figured out the one difference means that that guy who got the head start's still losing. Look. Because he got the 17 seconds to get to the end, and then the first one's got the 16 seconds to get to the end.
yeah.
So I guess he's really losing still by 1 second.
Yeah, but mine's not.
Tell us, what do you mean?
Like, mine's the different one. Because mine's the 7, and mine's, he's still losing in mine.
I told you. Travis!
Because now that I look at mine, my guy's losing by 1.5.
And Kimmy's have a bigger head start.
Try like,
A head start of 6 wasn't enough, 7 wasn't enough.
8. He tried 8 and it wasn't enough.
And 10
was a
is.
tie.
I found one now where it'll, yeah, and then if you did the 12-meter head start, he would win that way. So maybe it has to be over 10, because if you think about it, 10's the tie, and then, because if you think about it like if
I
it was
did
on
mine is 10, and mine turned out to be 16 and 15, and he's winning now. Look. Now he's winning, and I did 10 difference. I always make my races as 50 meters.
And they were doing
Neck.
40.
Capture did 50.
Mine
but-
is 1.5 now.
So maybe like 10, if it's over 10, it'll cross.
Well, I just got
Like if you
9.
put it on a graph.
Why do you want him to cross?
Well, not really like cross, but like,
Come to
cause,
each other. or something.
yeah, like when they finally meet, because when 2 numbers are going, they tend to normally meet at this point, and then like 1 will start going lower, like when we did the CDs or whatever. I think that was in the other book. But when we did the CDs, it was low until you got to a certain number, and then it shot up.
And then it shot up?
And if you think about it, maybe it's like that. There's a certain point for each meter race. When you get to the numbers, that's when it'll change.
Well, 9, when we did 9, it was 1.5 out of 10, and it was only 1. Maybe if we do 11.
But you're doing a different meter race than I am. So maybe we should try doing the same meter race to see if we...
I'm gonna start out like what I messed up on first, and then show you what I had fixed. So what we gotta do. 40 was the meter race, and then we divided by 2.5. That was his walking rate, and then it was 16. That takes him 16 seconds for the end. And then we tried to give him a 6 meter head start. So we did 34 divided by 2 for his walking rate. Then that equals 17, which is only a 1 second. But he still lost by 1 second. So then we changed it to
So can I just ask a question real quick? The 2 and the 2.5, that's what you changed the walking rates to?
that's their walking rate.
Okay, so you kept the 2.5 for the big guy and changed the little guy to 2. And you said you wanted it to be a 40-meter race?
And gave him the 6 meter head start.
Okay, I'm with you now.
Then we did. Then it's still 40 divided by 2.5
which equals 16 still. Then we gave him a 10 head start. 10-meter head start with his walking rate, and that equaled 15. Now he's winning instead of being the 17 to 15.
What we did is we gave the boy a 10-meter head start, and we changed his walking rate to 2 meters. And it's going to be a 19.5 second race, or a 49-meter race. And this is for the little person, I don't know what his name is, and for the other person. And that's what we got, and what I did is I took 49 and subtracted 48.75, and what we figured out is that there's only 1/4 of a meter in between.
Questions for Tyler's group? Dana.
What's the 2 and the 10 and the 19.5? Where do they come from?
The 10 is the head start, and we changed the little boy's walking rate to 2 meters. And we were trying to figure out like what numbers would get to like a certain numbers, and like one of us typed in 19.5, and well at first it was 19, and then we typed in 19.5, and then we got 49. Then we tried the same thing for the other person, and he got 48.75. Becca?
I didn't think you're supposed to be adding your walking rate because you don't really. Yeah, because like.
You're not really adding a walking rate,
You're adding the head start.
to the walking rate. Then, never mind.
So is the question about that plus there?
Yeah.
What's being added?
Yeah.
So maybe you can help us with that, Tyler.
And this plus sign right here, it's saying you're adding the head start to the regular walking rate. So he's still walking 2 meters, but you're just adding 10 more meters onto it.
Wait, so you're adding the meters. So you're adding 10 more meters than the bigger guy has to walk? I'm really confused.
No, this is the little person's.
I know, but you just said you're adding those 10 other meters that he has to walk. But really,
Yeah,
he's
to
not
the
walking
little
those
guy.
10 meters.
He's not walking those 10 meters. He's starting 10 meters.
And you're not really adding 10 plus 2, are you?
No.
If I'm understanding it, you're taking 2 times your 19.5 seconds and
plus
adding your 10 head start in.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Oh, can I know that?
Our group's walking rates was, we made them like running rates, so it was for a meal. It was 5, and then for that Andre kid, we made it 4, and then we just made a graph and we found one that, well, actually then we thought we needed to give him a head start, so we gave Andre a 6-meter head start. So then we just made a graph to see when they come together. There. And And then for 0 meters, Henry would already be going 6 because he gets a head start, and then he'll have 0, and then he'll have 10 because you gotta add the 4 from his walking rate, and then 5, 10, and then eventually they got really close at 5 seconds, and Henry would beat him by 1 second, so right here we stopped because it was really close. And Henry won by 1 second, and it was a 5-second race, and it was 25 meters long.
What did you keep going on? What happened at 6?
They were tied at 6. It'd be 30 and 30. And then the next one would be 35 and 34. And then Emil would be faster.
So you set up a table, and it was important to you to find out when they were exactly the same? Becca, say that again.
Okay, because when I figured out that when the 2 people tie, then the other person that was losing will come in first now.
So knowing where they tie, whether you found it on a table or you guys found it through using the numbers, or they found it by using inserting numbers into like an equation, somehow you needed to know when they tied.
For Andre, which is the little guy, we gave him only a 10-meter head start, and then we made his walking rate 2 per second, and then we had Emil's rate 2.5.
We went to the Y and typed these 2 in, and then we went to the window and made it so you could see all that go that far, and then we just got it. That's our table, and they just keep going until they meet at
19. Well, they meet at 20. It'd be 48 meters long, and Andre would win by half a meter, so it'd be really close.
and it'd be realistic and not like half the race is a head start.
So it looks like the table strategy that we saw several of the other day was helpful to you, because you could see where they were the same, and then you backed it up like other people did. How did this help you guys, this graph?
So we could figure out like when they met and stuff, right where they met, like here I think. So we know how long the race should be and how many seconds, 19 seconds and about 49 meters.
Can you go back to your equations? Tell us how those equations relate to what Kristen said for each person.
Here's the 10-meter head start, and here's the constant rate afterwards, and here's just the constant rate of the other guy.
You know, I was thinking when I was asking if there were any questions, Becca, this reminds me of what you said yesterday about how they meet and then split apart. I can see that on here. Because what happens after they meet and they're equal?
The other person
it can be
wins.
right.
The person that was losing starts to win.
Yeah. So the person that was losing, down at the bottom in the corner, eventually wins and is always going to win. Why is that person always going to win then after they meet?
He has a faster walking rate than the little guy.
So if he has a faster walking rate, why wasn't he winning at the beginning?
Because
he
the little guy
has
had a
a
head
head
start.
Now, before you guys say anything, could the rest of us try to figure out what the walking rate is and any head start they have? Who thinks they know what this group was thinking in terms of walking rates and any Head Start? Becky, you have an idea?
For the Y, like the first one, his walking rate was 2.5, and I think and then the second one is 1.5 for the walking rate.
And did anybody get a Head Start in this one?
Yeah, the second one, which I think is Honore, got a 30-meter Head Start.
Is that what you guys were thinking? Was Becca right?
Yeah.
All right. Now, sorry, go ahead.
So then, yesterday, we were doing, the day before yesterday, we figured out that 29 seconds were good, so we tried to do that one again. So we went down to 29. And then that was the 1 meter, and then we went down again. And it was the tie, so the one above it is the one we used.
You guys did this on the day before. Do you remember what you did there? And while they take a look at their poster for just a minute, the reason I'm asking them this, here's what I see a lot of. I see tables as we're finding to be very powerful. If we have a table, we're looking for where are they the same, and then you guys were going backwards from there to decide how long the race would be. So I'm seeing a lot of power in tables as a strategy. But I'm also seeing that you're writing the equations, but we're using the equations to make the table, or using the equations so that we can make the graph and see where they're meeting, which are all great strategies. But I noticed on the first day, this group, they had the equations, but they never made a table or graph. So I'm just wondering, how did you guys just use the equations without a table or graph? And I know it's taking you back a couple days, but see if you can remember.
Well, we first wrote this equation, and then we used substitutes, like for seconds. We put in 15, and then we figured out that it was like really far apart, and Reveal was winning. So we just kept guessing, and then we substituted 18, and they were getting closer, so we kept getting higher. And eventually we got to 29, and they were really close, so we went with that.
So what I see from what you were saying is you liked changing the walking rates to make them a little more realistic. You liked changing the Head Starts, so you made a little tighter rates and made it a little more realistic feeling. Whether you had huge Head Starts or small Head Starts, or walking rates that were close, or walking rates that were far apart, you found tables to be very valuable strategy, and looking at where they're the same and then going from there. Graphs seem to be a good strategy also, looking at where they meet and knowing what happens before and after that. And now this idea of maybe using the equations and substituting values into the equations. On Wednesday, I was continuing with problem 2.1 and 2.2. I decided to continue a little further with the summary from the day before, and I wasn't quite sure exactly what I wanted to do based on what had happened the day before as time was running out. I knew the kids had started to question the idea of the Head Start being so large and the rates between the two being large, the difference between the rates being large. And I knew they wanted to investigate that a little further, but sometimes 24 hours later they changed their mind. So my plan for today was to start with looking at where they were at and going with that, knowing that my goal for the problem was still looking at what does it mean to be linear, how do you use linear situations to find solutions, and looking at the different representations of graphs and tables and equations and how they're related. I had all the kids put their posters up, but I don't necessarily go over each kid's poster. I used to do that when I first started, and then I realized I was taking a lot of time, and kids were just presenting the same thing over and over again, and during the summary, I was losing kids because they were getting bored. They weren't hearing new information. So now during the explore time, as the kids are exploring and I'm asking questions, I'm also in my mind thinking about which things do I need to pull out, which group is working on certain strategies or certain representations, and how can I pull that out and get the discussion going in the class without overkilling one idea or replaying the same thing over and over again. So when I put the posters up, I had a plan that I was going to start with the most basic strategy of guess and check, And then my thought was I would go from there to a group that used tables, another group that used graphs, and another group that used equations. And that was my plan in using the posters. But as you can see, I ended up going from the group that used guess and check to then the kids changing the problem and working it through in another way. I made a decision to assign homework after I saw what the kids were doing in their groups and after I saw how they had changed the parameters of the problem as a group. When they were working on the problem, they had changed the parameters. They really did a lot of talking with each other on what the unit rates were telling them, what the Head Start was telling them, how that looked in a table, how that looked in a graph, and it was a lot of conversation between 2 to 3 people. I decided to assign homework that was related to this so that they could then go home and do a couple of problems. I chose page 31, ACE 2 and 3, because then they could take the time to reflect on this by themselves and see what sense they were making out of these walking rates and Head Starts and what that looks like in a table, graph, and equation. Today I chose not to do problem 2.2. And I say that I chose not to do it because I didn't formally do problem 2.2. However, I really feel that problem 2.2, the ideas of using the representations of tables, graphs, and equations for solutions gets done in problem 2.1. I've always found that I combine these two problems every year because it naturally happens. With several different groups in the room, I have never had a class where I didn't have tables, graphs, equations, and guessing and checking as strategies for solving the Henri and Emile problem come out. If it did happen that a certain strategy didn't come out, or I should say a certain representation didn't come out, then I would use problem 2.2 to help bring that strategy out. Tomorrow, I would like to move on to the next problem, which will continue the idea of finding solutions to linear situations. But I know there are still a couple of groups that need to share their ideas and get a couple of things on the table. And I think to clear up the conversation, I need to get the vocabulary out there of coefficients and y-intercepts to help build more of a conversation that is in common. So that's where I plan to pick up tomorrow, is finishing off this summary very quickly, introducing new vocabulary, and then getting them into another situation that will work on finding solutions.